Hello and welcome to DIY with Deck the Halls. We are going to be making our pedestal tray today. Your completed tray will end up something like this. You'll pick the colors, of course. So what you will need on hand is your kit bag. And in your kit bag, I'll unpack one of those for you right now. You will get 4 of these knobs. You'll have a yellow or an orange sponge, a white sponge, a piece of sandpaper, and then one of these touch-up brushes. Okay, so you'll want to have all these things with you, and then you will also want to have your paint colors nearby. So we're going to start by painting the base color of your tray. The tray has already been sanded, so it is ready to paint. So what you'll need to do is use your orange yellow sponge, and you'll grab some paint. Now you have a little paint dish. I'm just gonna put a little bit of paint on the side of my paper here, and you can just glob it up, and then you are going to paint the entire board the color that you selected. Okay, and then you can put on as many layers of paint as you would like. However, between each layer, you will want to make sure the paint does dry entirely. Now, I am using white, so I may want a little bit more or a little bit thicker, so maybe I would recommend using multiple thin coats of paint. Because you can still see the wood grain, and I want to see the wood grain, but not as much as I can see it right now. Okay, and so while you're painting that, you'll also want to remember to paint the edges. So for that, you can simply turn it on its side. You do not need to paint the bottom unless you really want to. But that part, of course, is not seen. But depending on where you put this, you may want that painted. So you'll want to paint all the edges. And then you'll want your board to completely dry before we move on to the next step. Okay, so once your board has dried completely and you've painted it the way that you want to see it, you're going to want to sand it. You're going to lightly sand your board before we apply the stencil. So you can take your little sander and go with the grain and lightly sand, and I wipe off with my hand. Now, if you're going for a more rustic look or a more worn look, then you might, sand a little bit more and maybe get those edges a little bit more than just lightly sanding it. Okay, when you're done with that, you can wipe it off with a cloth. Sometimes I use my fancy sleeve, but you just clean it off, and then you're ready to apply your stencil. Your stencil will come like this, and there will be a piece of transfer tape already applied, and that's the clear part. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna flip it over, and I would even encourage you to maybe set your tray aside so that you're working on a smooth, flat surface. And you might smooth out your stencil just to make sure it's all sticking on the other side. And then you're gonna start at a corner, and you're going to peel the 2 layers apart, okay? Now I'm going to do this back on the table here, but you're gonna want to pull slowly and notice that the blue is coming up here. So I'm gonna push it right back down. Okay, now because this is a very detailed design, you're gonna wanna pull slowly because you will notice right here I have a little piece coming up. Okay, and I wanna make sure I push that little piece back down. So your end result is going to be pulling the white up and leaving all of the blue down, okay? Now this is making a giant sticker. So you do not want it to stick to itself. If that happens, your stencil is pretty much ruined, okay? So you wanna make sure that you're not doing this by where there's a big breeze or where someone can come and stick something to this. You wanna keep the stencil flat, just like that. Now this white paper, you can just throw away or use it to dab your paint on, and we'll talk about that in our next step. Once you have peeled your stencil up, it will look like this. The transfer tape is still there. That's holding your stencil pieces together. You will want to take this and apply it to your tray. So I'm gonna put my tray back on my workspace. And now I'm going to take my stencil, and I flipped it over so that the transfer tape is on top and the sticky side is on the bottom. Now I'm going to line up my stencil where I would like it on my board. You'll notice that there will be a little bit of overhang, and that's just so you can decide where you want your stencil to be placed. When you are happy with your placement, meaning you've decided, I love my stencil right there, I'm happy with it, you're gonna start in the middle with your hands and you're going to push out. Okay, you're firmly pushing down because now you are applying that stencil to your board. Okay, and now I'm using my hands. Now on our direction sheet, it also talked about a squeegee or a credit card. You could also take a credit card or a gift card, and you could push down your stencil like that. Now I did it with my hands, and I think that's great. So don't feel like you need to find that credit card or gift card to scrape it down. Once you've done that, the stencil's applied, you're going to now do the same process we did before, except this time we're going to peel up our clear transfer tape. Now because there is a little bit of an overhang, it will peel up a little bit. If you want, and if you have a sharp scissors around or a knife, you could trim off, I'm just using an X-Acto knife right now, you could trim off the edges just so you don't have to worry about it. And I'm actually going to turn this to just pull off those extra sides that might lift a little bit. Now if you don't have an X-Acto knife to do this part at home or a sharp knife, it's okay. You can still peel up your stencil. You're just gonna have to be aware and a little bit more careful of those edges. And I would actually recommend doing this after you have started peeling up so that you have a spot where you can grab. Now I'm turning my board back this way because I tend to always pull my stencils from this side. Not really sure why, but that's just what works for me. So you will still possibly see some lifting from the blue stencil. If that happens, you're gonna push it back down, because now the goal for removing your transfer tape is for your transfer tape to come up clean and all of the blue to stay down. So you'll see I lost some blue over here, so I'm just gonna go back and kind of push it down. Remember, it's a sticker too, so if it comes up and you can't just push it down while it's attached to the transfer tape, pull it off and just stick it down in the spot that you want it. Now, because I did use the squeegee, it is on here very good. So I'm using a lot of muscle, let's say, to pull this off. Okay, so we're just gonna keep pulling until all of our transfer tape is removed. And I see that I missed a little spot right here. I did not see that come up, so I just went back to put it in. Okay, my corner is lifting a little bit, so here I'm just gonna pull that over, and then I will pull this. So however you can get your transfer tape off, feel free to do that. Now you have your stencil. Now you just pulled something off of it. So I always recommend people just use their hands to smooth down their stencil one last time before we paint. Okay, so now you're going to select your paint color, your second paint color, and you're going to you just need a little bit because less is more. And we're going to dab our stencil. So wherever you see white now is going to become the color. You're going to use your white makeup sponge, and we're going to dab. So you're going to load your paint on, which means put paint on your sponge, and then dab some of it off in my dab off pile, and then you're going to simply dab on your tray. You'll notice that I'm doing very light coats, and I'm not going back and forth. I am dabbing. So that I'm not trying to push paint on. I'm trying to keep it very light, because if I put too much paint on, or if I paint back and forth, you run the risk of pushing paint underneath your stencil, and then you'll have some bleeding, which you can clean up afterwards, but you won't know until we peel up the stencil. Okay, so just keep it very light. I would recommend doing a very light coat and then coming back for your second coat if you want this color darker. Okay, so you'll continue doing this until your entire board or your entire stencil is covered. If you want to paint the edges of your tray, go for it. That would be awesome. That's something you can think about while you are dabbing your stencil. Okay, once you have painted your stencil and you've painted it to your liking, so maybe you want to put a little bit more paint in certain spots so it's a smoother coat, or it's a equal amount of paint so that you don't see any of the dabs. You'll set this tray aside, okay? And then you're going to work on painting your knobs that will end up being the pedestals to your tray. With these, you can paint these any color you want. You could even leave them the way they are. So my tray is white with the bright pink, so I think I'm going to paint them. I'm trying to decide here, but I think I'm going to paint them white, because I really think I'm going to paint the edge of my board bright pink, because I think that would be a fun accent. So to paint these, you can use your sponge, the other end of your paint sponge, the white one, or you can go back to your original sponge, and you can put them on top of the paintbrush that we gave you, the touch-up brush, and then you can just dab these. I mean, you can certainly hold these if you want, that is fine, but these brushes fit right in the knob, and so it can hold it for you, and then you can kind of turn it. Now I am dabbing because it is difficult to paint it as it moves around. So I am dabbing. So the bottom of your tray will have a little bit of texture, but once it dries, it does smooth out. Okay, so you'll want to repeat this to all four. See, and it rolled off on me. So you'll want to repeat this process for all four of your feet, or the pedestals. You do not need to paint the bottom of them because you will be gluing those, and no one will see that part. Okay, so complete these four, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so while your knobs dry, you will be able to start peeling off your stencil as long as your tray is dry. As long as this paint is dry or semi-dry, you can start peeling these up. So to peel it up, you'll start in a corner and you will just start pulling. You'll notice I'm kind of pulling like I'm pulling off a Band-Aid, but I'm not being too wild with it. And for this project, you will have a lot of pieces that do not get pulled up right away with your original pull. So you will want to have, we have X-Acto knives in the studio, but maybe a sharp tweezers, or if you have any crafting supplies for crafting tools that might have a little point at the end. We've also used screws that we build some of our signs with. So we've used those to pick up the insides of the stencils. So you have a lot of options, but maybe even your fingernails work for that. So you'll go through and you will peel up your stencil and then go through and peel up each piece of stencil that did not come up when you originally started pulling. And then this will reveal your awesome project. This is just the beginning. We're going to start assembling. So while you'll see that I have my feet over there drying, while that's happening, I'm going to continue to pull up and reveal my pattern on my tray. This may take you a little bit of time, but it's gonna be so worth it in the end. Your tray is going to be beautiful. Okay, so here we go. We have weeded or peeled up our stencil from our entire tray, okay? And you have your knobs or the feet for your tray drying, or they have dried, okay? And I did say that I wanted to paint the edge of my tray, so I'm going to do that now before I apply the tray. So to do that, I'm gonna do it in the bright pink color that I'm using. It's called Diva Pink, if you're wondering. And I'm gonna do that so that I have my tray ready and set when I apply or glue on the feet. So to paint the edge of your tray, you can use your white sponge that you were using before. Now, if you want to paint it a color that you haven't already used and you just have this one sponge, you can cut this off and then keep using it. So we generally reuse our sponges for a while because we just keep trimming them. Okay, so if you want to paint the side, that would be fun. Give your tray a little bit of character on the side. Even if you have a different color laying around your house, you can certainly use paint that you like house paint that you paint your walls with. You could certainly use that. Oh, it looks like I have a little stencil here that is on the side of my board, so I'll peel that off quick. So I'll just paint these edges. And remember, you don't have to paint the bottom of your board or the bottom of your tray, but you certainly can if you would like to. So I just think that this will give the tray just a little bit more of a different look. And it'll be kind of fun to have kind of a border around it. Okay, so once I've done that, the top of my tray is dry. This would be a time too that if you want it a little bit more distressed, you could sand your tray. The person that I'm making this for is not into the distress, so I won't sand it, but you can certainly sand your tray to make it more distressed and worn looking. Then you'll flip over your board and you'll lay it down, and this is where you're going to glue on the knobs or the feet of your tray. We use super tight glue at the studio, but you can use any type of glue, wood glue or craft glue. Because this is a tray and you won't be moving it around too much, that should be fine. So we're just gonna put glue around the bottom, and with this glue it does say to let it sit for 30 seconds to a minute before applying it or before bonding. So I'm just gonna put some glue on and let those sit for a moment. Okay. And then you're probably wondering, where should I put the feet? And so this one's already done, and it's probably a half a finger width in. I would just encourage you to put them all at approximately the same spot. In each corner. You don't want to put them too far in, so you don't want your tray to be off balance. Okay, and then you'll simply glue these on, and you'll have to follow the directions on the paint that you're using, but let them sit to dry and let the edge of your tray dry, and then you should be all set. Okay, so you've let your tray sit, you've assured that you're ready to go, that your pieces are in place, and then you can flip it over and your tray is ready to go, ready to display. Now, since this is a tray and it might be used more often or handled more often than, say, a sign on your wall, we would recommend that you use a clear coat to seal your tray. And any clear coat will work. So choose one that you like best or maybe you're familiar with, or you can send us a message about what kind of clear coat. If you plan on putting food on here, you'll want to read the label to make sure it's food safe. But otherwise, you are all set. Your tray is ready to go. Thanks for DIYing with Deck the Halls today.